The lock on Unit 214 wasn't the one from the auction photos. Somebody had changed it after the listing went up. I almost walked away right there. Then I heard something shift behind the door, soft, deliberate, not the settling sound of boxes. I told myself it was a cat. Facilities get cats. I cut the new lock anyway, rolled the door up 18 inches, and a blanket, folded, not dumped, slid off a stack of bins and hit the concrete at my feet. Warm, the blanket was still warm. Somewhere in the dark at the back of the unit, past the edge of my flashlight, I heard someone breathing. Storage World Corporate confirmed this unit as abandoned, non-payment, 6 months. I said out loud, mostly to hear my own voice. So who's back there? Nobody answered, but the breathing stopped. My name is Maya. 29, laid off from a marketing job 8 months ago, running a resale side hustle off abandoned storage auctions because it beats another round of job applications that go nowhere. Unit 214 cost me $60 at a live online auction. No walkthrough allowed beforehand, the way these always work, just a blurry 10-second phone video and a starting bid. The video showed exactly what you'd expect from a genuinely abandoned unit. Dust, a rolled rug, a few sealed bins. Nothing that explained $60 turning into an actual mystery. I'd learned to trust that read the hard way. 4 auctions back, I'd bid on a unit that looked fine in the listing photo and turned out to be 200 pounds of water-damaged drywall. Cost me more to haul to the dump than I'd paid for the unit itself. Since then, I don't just look at what's in a unit. I look at whether the story the unit is telling actually adds up. I'd done maybe 30 of these auctions by now. You get a read on what abandoned actually looks like, the dust pattern, the smell, the way nothing's been touched in a specific, particular way. This one didn't read right the second the door came up. The dust was disturbed in footprint-shaped patches. The bins nearest the front were stacked to look undisturbed, but they weren't sealed, just closed. Staged was the word that came to mind. Somebody had arranged this unit to look abandoned to anyone glancing in, without actually being abandoned at all. I'd planned to spend 20 minutes doing a fast inventory and be home by dinner. Instead, I stood in the doorway of Unit 214 for a full minute, just listening, before I made myself go any further. I called out again, quieter this time. I'm not calling anyone. I just bought this unit an hour ago and I need to know if someone's actually back there. Nothing, but the air past the bins felt warmer than the front of the unit had any right to be, this deep into an unheated building in October. I found the source 2 rows of boxes in, a space cleared against the back wall, a camping cot, a phone charger jury-rigged off an extension cord that ran up through a gap in the ceiling panel, toward the building's exterior outlets. Someone had been living here, not squatting in the mess and trash sense, living here carefully, the way you live somewhere you're trying not to be noticed in. Under the edge of the cot, lined up in a neat row instead of tossed aside, sat a stack of empty protein bar wrappers. Rationed, by the look of it, one every couple of days rather than eaten however they came. Whoever this was wasn't just hiding here. They were surviving here, on a budget, on purpose. I looked closer at the ceiling panel itself before I left. The edge where it hinged down was worn smooth, not freshly damaged. The kind of wear that comes from months of the same careful hands opening and closing the same hinge, not from a single break-in. I backed out, relocked what I could, and drove straight to the front office instead of calling the police, mostly because I wanted an answer before I wanted a report filed. The manager, a heavy-set guy in his 50s named Dwayne, went very still when I described the cot and the extension cord. Stiller than abandoned unit had some junk in it, should have made anyone go. Probably a transient, he said, too fast, already reaching for his coffee instead of looking at me. Happens sometimes. I'll have someone clear it before your walkthrough deadline. I already had my walkthrough deadline. That's why I'm here. Somebody was in there 20 minutes ago and they heard me coming. Dwayne's eyes went to the security monitor behind his desk, then away from it, fast enough that I noticed exactly where he didn't want me looking. A younger guy at the second counter, a part-timer, name tag Reed Marcus, glanced up like he was about to say something, then caught the look Dwayne gave him and went back to stacking rental forms instead. I filed that away too. Whatever this was, Dwayne wasn't the only one who knew about it. I'd like to see the footage for 214, I said, since I own the contents now. System's been down since Tuesday, he said, not making eye contact. IT's coming Thursday. I've been laid off long enough to recognize a manager improvising a story he hasn't practiced. I said okay and left and didn't believe a word of it. I bought a battery-powered trail camera that afternoon, the kind meant for deer, not people, and clipped it inside a bin lid angled at the back wall of 214, then closed the unit back up like nothing had changed. I told myself I'd check it in the morning. I checked it at midnight instead, sitting in my car outside my own apartment, unable to stop refreshing the app. The first night, nothing. No motion at all past 9 p.m., which somehow unsettled me more than an alert would have. Like whoever this was already knew a new camera had gone up and was waiting me out. The second night, 11:47 p.m., the vent panel in the ceiling, the one the extension cord ran through, swung down on a hinge nobody had installed at the factory. A person dropped through it into the unit from a crawl space above the row. Not a transient who'd found an unlocked door. Someone who knew this building's bones well enough to move through the ceiling instead of the aisle. The camera caught her face for less than 2 seconds before she moved out of frame. A girl, maybe 17, 18. Not an adult transient, a kid. 2 nights later, the same thing happened again. 11:44 p.m. this time, close enough to call it a pattern rather than a coincidence. I started keeping my own log before I'd even decided what I was going to do with it. 2 sightings, both within a 4-minute window, both through the same panel. I sat in my car a long time after that, the engine off, trying to decide whether the responsible thing was calling the police that minute or waiting until morning to at least understand what I was actually reporting. I went back to the footage instead. Frame by frame, slower this time, the way you rewatch something once the shock wears off enough to actually look. In the corner of one frame, barely in view, sat a spiral notebook I hadn't noticed on my walkthrough, tucked under the cot's edge instead of packed in a bin like everything else. I went back to the facility first thing the next morning, before I called anyone, and let myself into 214 one more time, just to read it. I told myself that was the responsible version of this, not the reckless one. The notebook wasn't a diary in the way I expected. It was closer to a ledger, dates, a running tally of cash, and one line, underlined twice. If he finds the plate number, I have to move again by morning. I flipped further back. Entries going back 11 months, longer than this unit had supposedly sat, abandoned. The rental paperwork Dwayne had shown me listed the unit under a name. A. Carol Whitfield. That didn't match any name written anywhere in that notebook. I looked Carol Whitfield up myself before I went back to Dwayne's office. Public records. Nothing hidden, just curiosity I couldn't talk myself out of. 81 years old, 3 states away, no obvious connection to this town or this facility that I could find in 20 minutes of searching. Whoever she was to Riley, she wasn't a local landlord skimming rent off a runaway. That didn't add up any better than the rest of it. I brought the notebook straight to Dwayne's office and set it on his desk without a word. He looked at it for a long moment, then finally looked at me instead of past me. "Her name's Riley," he said, quiet, like the fight had gone out of him. "Sit down." Riley had come through the facility's front gate on foot 14 months ago, he said, asking if any units had loose back panels. The kind of question that told him exactly what she needed it for before she said another word. "I almost called it in that same day," Dwayne said. Then I asked myself what actually happens to a 17-year-old girl once you call it in, with no family listed and a name she wouldn't give me. I've got a daughter her age. I know exactly what the system does with a case like that when nobody's watching closely. I didn't like any of the answers. Carol Whitfield was Riley's great-aunt, who'd been quietly paying the unit's rent in cash at the counter every month. listed as the renter on paper, so nothing traced back to Riley's actual name. Riley's stepfather had a restraining order against him in 2 counties and had already found her twice before, once at a shelter, once at a cousin's apartment, each time within days of her using her real name anywhere official. How does a 17-year-old even end up asking a storage facility about loose ceiling panels? I asked. Dwayne said a shelter counselor 2 towns over, someone who'd seen this exact situation go wrong before and didn't trust the system to move fast enough, had quietly pointed her here, off the books, the same way people used to pass along the name of a doctor who wouldn't ask questions. Nobody had written any of it down anywhere. That was the entire point. The unit going to auction wasn't a mistake, Dwayne said. Carol missed 1 payment on purpose 2 months back. Wanted to see if anyone official would actually notice a supposedly abandoned unit had someone living in it, or if it'd just get bought by a stranger and forgotten. A test, kind of. A bad one. It got bought by me, I said, and I noticed. Dwayne nodded slowly. That's the part Carol didn't plan for. I've been buying Riley groceries out of my own pocket for a year and telling corporate the cameras on that row are intermittent. Marcus half knows, enough to keep his mouth shut, not enough to be the one holding it if it ever came out. I didn't know what else to do that didn't end with her back in a house with that man in it. Why didn't you just call someone? A real shelter, a caseworker, anything with an actual system behind it. Because the last 2 times a system had her, he found her inside a week, Dwayne said. Paperwork's exactly how he's been finding her. A storage unit under a dead woman's maiden name isn't in any system he can search. I sat with that longer than I expected to. It wasn't a good plan. It was the only plan that had worked so far. 3 days later, while I was still deciding what the right next move even was, a car I didn't recognize idled outside the facility gate for 40 minutes without ever badging in. Dwayne clocked it before I did. He'd apparently learned the specific shape of that particular fear a long time before I showed up asking about a blanket. That's him, he said. Same plate Riley wrote down in the notebook. He called Riley's cell, the 1 burner number he had for her, before he called anyone else. Don't come in tonight. Go to the diner on 5th. I'll meet you there. I drove to the diner myself instead of waiting at the facility. I told myself it was so Dwayne wouldn't be the only adult with eyes on her, but really I just didn't want to sit still not knowing if she'd made it there. She was already in a back booth when I got there, notebook in her lap, watching the door in a way that told me she'd done this exact thing before. The car passed the diner's parking lot once, slow, without stopping. I don't know if that was him looking for her or just a man driving somewhere else entirely. Neither of us said which one we thought it was. I'd already noticed a car like that, twice this week before today, Riley said quietly, turning her water glass in slow circles instead of looking at me. I didn't say anything to Dwayne. I've learned that saying it out loud before you're sure just makes everyone panic at the wrong time, and then you move for nothing. She'd been carrying that alone for days. It was the first time I understood, all the way through, exactly how long she'd been doing all of this by herself. I called the police myself this time, no more deciding what the responsible version of anything was. A restraining order violation, a documented plate number and address. That part, finally, was simple. The man never actually badged into the facility, sat outside the gate until a patrol car rolled up, then drove off before anyone reached his window, which the responding officer said matched exactly how these situations usually go. Watching, not confronting, until he had a location locked down for later. It wasn't the clean arrest I'd half expected from a story like this. It was a plate number, a violation on record, and a patrol car now aware of exactly which facility to circle past on a schedule. The responding officer, a woman named Delgado, walked me through what happened next in plainer terms than I expected. "This isn't over because we didn't cuff him tonight," she said. "It's over because now there's a documented pattern tied to a real address, and next time he's not looking at a warning. That's what actually holds up later, not the one dramatic night, the paper trail after it. I wrote that down almost word for word, mostly for Riley's sake, so she'd have it in her own words too. Riley came to the facility office the next afternoon, in person, for the first time since I'd bought her unit out from under her without meaning to. She was smaller than the 2 seconds of camera footage had made her look. Steadier, too, in a way that surprised me, like someone who'd had a long time to get used to being afraid and had found a version of calm on the other side of it. "I read your notebook," I told her. "I'm sorry, I didn't know what else to do with it once I had it." "It's fine," she said. "I always figured somebody would eventually. I just didn't expect it to be the person who bought my stuff for $60. Riley's great-aunt Carol drove up from 3 states away that weekend, and this time did it the way that actually holds up on paper legal guardianship filing, a real address, an attorney who specialized in exactly this kind of case. The stepfather was picked up 11 days later on the restraining order violation. Plate number and patrol log doing the work that no shelter paperwork had managed in 2 years. I gave Riley back everything in Unit 214 that was actually hers, the notebook included, and let the resale plan for the rest of it quietly die. Some units, it turns out, aren't really for sale. I changed how I run the rest of my auctions after that, whether or not it makes financial sense. I call the facility office before I ever cut a lock now, not just to check the account status, but to actually ask if anyone knows anything about the unit that isn't on the paperwork. Most of the time, the answer is nothing. I still ask. Dwayne kept his job, technically, though corporate finally did fix those intermittent cameras on his row. He told me he considers that a fair trade. He told me one more thing, the last time I saw him, that his own daughter had run off for 4 days 2 years back, over something that felt enormous to her at the time and small to everyone else after. "She came home on her own," he said. "Not everyone gets to. I figured if I couldn't fix that for my own kid after the fact, I could at least not get in the way of somebody else's." Riley started community college in the spring, 3 states away, living with Carol full-time. She still writes in a notebook. She told me once on the phone, different notebook, same handwriting, just numbers she actually wants to keep now instead of numbers she needed to survive on. If you take one thing from this, let it be that abandoned is a word people use for things nobody's looked at closely enough yet, storage units and people both. I still do the auctions. I check every unit slower now, and I always knock first, even on the ones the listing swears are empty. 6 weeks later, an envelope showed up at my apartment. No return address. Inside, $300 in cash and a single line in handwriting I recognized from the notebook. For Unit 214, interest for holding it safe without knowing why. I never gave Riley my home address. I still haven't figured out how she got it. I keep the envelope in a drawer, not the cash. Some nights I think about tracking down how she found me. Other nights I think that's exactly the kind of question that's better left alone. Thanks for watching. If you've ever bought something at an auction,